Hey folks. All right, I've been meaning to come back live with you guys for a few days and my schedule got nuts. So I know Saturday's not probably a great time to do it, but I don't want to do it tomorrow and then another week start and craziness and clients. So I figured I would come and do this now. So I had a session this week with a client of mine. Her name is Amy. I asked her if it was okay to name her. She said yes. Um, and I've been working with her a few weeks. And she is working with me to grow her business um, and try to get the gunk that's in the way of her really showing up powerfully. And so she asked me, we were talking about change, and she was frustrated because some of the stuff that's coming up in our sessions, she's been working with and working through for it feels like years. So she was asking me, like, what is change and how do we change? And when I work with someone and I'm trying to get them, liberated, freed up from all their limiting beliefs and the stuff, the baggage that holds them back, how does that happen and how long does it take? So she, her sense is that it's not happening fast enough or deeply enough for her. And so I answered her in whatever ways I could in the moment. And then I thought about it and I thought, like she can't be the only one who feels this way. So I figured that um, I would come on here and share with you guys as well. Um, I'm trying to find myself on my page and I'm not seeing myself, so I don't know if it's, hopefully I am in the right place. Um, hmm. All right, well, I will do it and hopefully it will record and it will show in the right spot. I am not seeing anyone watching me, but that could be just Facebook doing its thing, and it is, like I said, Saturday. Um, all right, we will take it from here. So the first thing I want to say about change is that we're all different. We're all different. We all evolve. We all transform at different speed and in slightly different ways. And we all have different things that we want to change and different routes from where that change needs to come. So obviously, changing a limiting belief that comes from a place of trauma is slightly different than changing a limiting belief that comes from just a bad experience as an adult. So honor the fact that you're different and honor the fact that everybody's different and trust. This is important. Trust that change is happening. Um, there's mainly three ways that people transform. There's instantaneous transformation. So you can see that with energy work. I've definitely seen that happen with people with energy work where they are in one session or with hypnotherapy in one session, something shifts. I can't say that it shifts all the way fully, but sometimes it does. And it's literally something that never comes back. So that's the instantaneous transformation. It happens right away. It happens like that. And it's more or less done. The other way to change is cumulative or compounding change, almost like compounding interest. It's like you change little by little and it builds on each other. And at some point, the transformation is complete. And then the last way that we change is what some people will call retroactive change. So it's literally like you are changing, but the changes are subtle and they're deep and they're beyond your conscious mind. And at some point, you look back and something's different. You don't quite know what's different. You don't quite know when something shifted and when something changed. You just know that something is different and something shifted. Um, a little bit like some of that can compare, like I've used the example of a headache before, where it's like, you have a headache, and then at some point, an hour later, a couple hours later, the headache's gone, and you can't quite tell when that happened, but you just know that it happened. So that's the retroactive change. So the thing to keep in mind, guys, is that change oftentimes happens from my experience in a spiral or like the layers of an onion. So you can have instantaneous transformation. And then something, that same thing in a slightly different way, will come back up to be repaired and to be released again and again and again. And every time that happens, you're doing it, you're changing at a deeper level, at a fuller level. Um, so it doesn't mean that change isn't happening. It just means that it's taking its time. And whenever you encounter something in life that's a little bit different, then literally in that moment, um, like another layers of your trigger or another layers of your wound, of your baggage, of your block is being brought up to the surface to be released and to be healed and to be let go of. So, trust that process too, that it is happening. It is happening in its own way. The other thing to keep in mind is that change or transformation happen in a holistic manner. So when you think of us as human beings, well, we've got a physical body, a physical essence. We've got a mental essence. We've got our thoughts, our belief system. We've got an emotional essence. We're emotional beings. We have emotions, we have feelings, we have sensations, and we are also spiritual beings. Hey, Sharon. So, change almost always has to happen at all of those levels. You have to see change happen in your body, in your cells, in the bones of yourself and in the world. That's the physical aspect. You have to see change happen mentally. You have to start changing the way you view the world, the way you view yourself, changing the way your thoughts happen, not buying into your own bullshit, essentially. That's a mental transformation. That's a mental change. Then there's the emotional change, the ripples emotionally, intuitively of all of the stuff we're trying to let go of. So change has to happen also emotionally, where the emotions are not coming up as much, or they're not coming up quite in the same way, or they don't have the grip that they had before. They're not as intense. And then there's the spiritual aspect of it. And, different people are more or less comfortable with that. But for me, change has to happen across past lives, if you believe in that, across parallel lives, if you believe in that, across your ancestry, if you believe in that, if you believe, well, actually, science proves now that stuff is passed down to us. Change has to happen almost in a space that is beyond time and space and is literally connected to our deepest nature, to our soul. And from that perspective, it's almost like change is happening on all levels at the same time. So when someone is not changing, oftentimes they're concentrating in one area. They're concentrating on the mental aspect, or they're concentrating on their emotions, but maybe they're not taking action. Or maybe they're concentrating on ancestry, like ancestral wounding and doing ancestral healing, but they're not doing the other aspects of the change. They're not taking action. They're not changing their minds. They're not working with their emotions. They're not working with their bodies. When that happens, oftentimes the change is not complete, the transformation is not complete, and there's a seed of that baggage, a seed of that block that remains within us, and that still needs to be worked through. So it will keep popping up until we find our way to work through it at that level. So I'm gonna talk about action a little more. This is my secret power. This is the thing that has worked for me and for my client. I want you to think of change as two wings of a bird. There is the inner work, and then there's the outer work. And for a lot of us who are, lighthouses, like change bearers, spiritual leaders, soulful, we're really good at doing the inner work. And we almost wait for the inner work to be done to translate that into outer work. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. It almost works like they have to move in tandem. If you're only working on your own self inwardly, but you're not taking action to embody and to anchor and to root whatever change, whatever transformation you're doing inwardly, then you're missing a piece. And I see a lot of people do that. They're waiting to be fully whole, fully healed to do something different. And my invitation, my encouragement, my homework for all my clients is when we work on something inwardly, is I always ask them to figure out something they can do in their lives that essentially will anchor that change, will anchor that transformation, will start acting as if and moving into the act, the physicality of transformation. So, you might want, like, let's say you're working on abundance and doing inner work so you feel more worthy, more able to receive fully and plenty. Um, as you do the inner work, you might want to ask yourself, what would a more empowered me do? What would a me that is feels whole, feels complete, feels abundant, feels able, open and able to receive, what would he or she do? What would be a small step they would do? How would they interact with this person or interact in this circumstance? And whatever hint you get, do it. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. It's small step by small step. So anchoring in the transformation, anchoring in whatever change you are experiencing, one small step at a time, and taking action, taking courageous action to anchor it in the real world. Um, yeah, I'm looking at my notes, seeing if there's anything else. So that's about it. Um, Change comes in layers. It's either instantaneous or cumulative or even retroactive, where it's happening at such a level that you don't even realize you're changing. And suddenly you wake up one day and you look back and you're like, oh, I've been a different person. I'm not sure where that happens, but I have changed. I am changing. And then keeping in mind, when you're working on change, are you working on a physical level? Are you working on an emotional level, on a mental level, and on a spiritual level? And making sure you're touching all of these. If I was to work this on a spiritual level, what would that look like? If I was to work with this on a mental level, my beliefs, my thoughts, what would that look like? If I was to work with this in an embodied way in my body, how would I shift this energy in my body? What would that look like? And then the action, the physicality of it. Take action. Make sure that as you're working with changes like two wings of a bird, you have to do inner work and it has to have an outer work that matches it. And that is the ladder. It's literally a ladder where they support inner work and outer work supports each other and builds on each other. If you're missing the outer work, it's almost like inner work doesn't have a foundation to land on and to get anchored in. So on occasions, I'm going to do these Q&As. I think they're fun. I have my clients are always asking me questions, so I can always use my clients to come in. But I also want to put this out for you guys who are watching this. If you have questions that come up in your life, and mostly I want to answer questions about inner work, like transforming and how do we transform the blocks and the limiting beliefs and just the stuff, the shit that holds us back. And also, I want to answer questions about taking your light out there, bringing your gifts and creating a soulful, a successful business where you can transform lives, you can honor your soul's calling, and you can also create an abundant life for yourself, a prosperous life for yourself. So if you have questions about transformation and creating, building, growing a successful, soulful, transformative business, then send me a message, send me a DM in Messenger where you ask me a question. I will not only will I answer you in Messenger, but if I feel like other people could really benefit from your question and from the answer, then I'll do a live that week with it. All right, that is it for me. I'm seeing a message from Sharon. Yes, we need both the inner and the outer. Absolutely. Thank you for you guys who see this, and I hope this was helpful, and have an amazing, wonderful weekend. Bye, guys.